All right, so when my video, my iPad ran out of memory, I was on this problem here. So we are on pair 1, graph B, and I was going through and writing this up here, and I don't think I wrote my lines up here. So I found the points, -4, 5, I'm sorry, -4, -5, and 8, -4. And since this blue point is below this blue point to the left of it, then I'm going to draw my vertical line through that, which is x equal -4. And then my line that is across, that goes through the other point, is y equals -4. So those two intersect right here. So I'm going to start at -4, 5 and go up, +1. And then I'm going to turn right to get to the next point, and I'm going to go to the right 12 spaces, and I counted those. Okay, so when I counted them, I got the slope to be 1/12. So here's my description: up 1 space on x equals -4. That's a line from the point -4, -5. Then when x is equal to -4, intersects with y equals -4, the one that goes horizontally, go right 12 spaces to your other point, which is 8, -4. Now, if you would have a graph that, well, let's say you don't have a graph and they just give you 2 points. Well, mathematically, you can still calculate it. Or if it was a graph that was so big and they were so far apart you couldn't even see it on the graph, then that's another way you can use the math. So I'm going to show you the math on this one too. So we're going to, it says write the directions from part B as ratios, then compare the ratios. How does this relate to the steepness of the graph? Okay, so if I go back to point A, I'm sorry, not point A, graph A, and look at the distance between this point and where it intersects. Okay, if I go back to the y-axis, I can count, but also I counted up 4, but I can also look, and there's a space there of, it goes from -1 down to -5. Well, I can find the distance between those two, and we always find distance, we've done this before, by subtracting the two numbers. And it doesn't matter which one you put first. So to find the change in y, since that's the y-axis, and I'm going up 4, and going up is like traveling up just parallel to the y-axis, then I have to look at the y-coordinates. On the y-coordinates, I've got y and y1. And I named these on my last video, and it was like these two I called X and Y, like they only have a first name, like Cher and Bono. Then over here, I can't have Cher and Bono again because these are different points, so I'm going to call this one Y1, or I'm sorry, X1 and Y1. And the subs, it's called a subscript, that's like their last name. So you just put a last name with the X and Y. So whatever these people are, they're married, I guess, and they have the same last name. All right, but we can differentiate from the X and the Y. So when I go from -1 to -5, here's my -1, it's the Y1, and here is my negative, yeah, that's supposed to be -5. I put -3 there. That should be a -5. So I can take the -5 and subtract the -1 because that's the distance from here to here on the y-axis. And when I do that, I get -5 plus 1. Well, that adds up to -4. But I'm doing a distance, just like we did up in the other one. And that means I have to put the absolute value sign around it, because once I get the difference, distance is always positive. So that's what absolute value means, the distance. And it always comes out positive. Okay, so then if I look at the change in x, then when I get here and I turn right and I'm traveling 5 to the right, if I look at the x-axis, I'm at -4 on the x, and then when I come over here, I'm at 1 on the y. So all I have to do is subtract -4 minus 1, and I did that right here. Well, that's like -4 plus -1, which is really -5. But again, I have my absolute value symbols here because I'm finding the distance between the two. So it becomes +5. So the slope of this is +4 over +5, and that's what we got mathematically. We can do the same thing with this one. Okay, so here is our line we're trying to find the slope of, And if we do, we always do the change in y first, okay? And I didn't write it over here, but we're going up 1. Well, what are the y coordinates? Well, they're -5 and -4. So if I take -5 minus -4, that's like -5 plus 4, which is -1. And when I take the absolute value of that, it becomes +1. And then when I go to the right, I'm taking the x value, which is at -4 up here on the x, and I'm traveling parallel to the x-axis, so I end up here at 8. So I go from -4 on the x here to 8 on the x here, because that's the points on the x-axis. So I'm actually saying -4 minus 8, which is really -4 plus -8, which is -12, but I have to take the absolute value, so it's +1/12. And 4/5 is bigger than 1/12, so this line is steeper than this line right here, which was obvious. Okay, and remember, you can pause this at any time. All right, so the next one, and I'm just going to kind of go through, and I'm not going to say the directions anymore because they're just like the directions that I've done twice already, but they are different graphs, so we are going to look at which one's steeper. And here, this line is here, that's pretty steep. So slope dude, he's not going to want to go up the slope of graph A because it's steeper, so A. So then you would write your directions on how to do that, and then when we come down here and calculate the slope, we know we're going to go up 7 and right 1, but if we actually calculate it, then we would be going, let's see, we're on the y-axis, so we're going to go from -3 up to 4. So I'm going to go -3 is the y, and this will be the y1. So I'm going to take -3 minus 4, +4, yep. And that's going to be for the change in y, and I'm going to take its absolute value. And then the change in x, I'm going from, let's see, I'm only going over 1. So I'm actually, if I look at the x-axis, I'm going from 7 to 8. Well, here's my 8 on the x, here's my 7 on the x, those are both x's. So I'm going to say 7, let's see, got to make sure I subtract them in the right order. So I went -3, I started with this one and did -3 minus 4. So I have to start with this one, 7 minus 8. So when I do 7 minus 8, I take its absolute value. Well, -3 minus 4 is like plus a -4. So that's the absolute value of -7. And then the absolute value of 7 minus 8 is -1, because that's plus a -8. Absolute value of -7 is 7. Absolute value of -1 is 1. So the slope of this one is 7. Then if I look over at this other one, I'm going from 2,1 to 7,4. So I'm going up 3, so +3, and I'm going right 6. 3 over 6 is 1/2, or I could have used this subtraction just like I did over here. Here I would take the y, which is 1, minus the 4, and that gives me -3. I'm going to take its absolute value, and then I'm going to take, since I started with this one, then I say 2, that x, minus this x, 7. So 2 minus 7 is -5, and then take the absolute value, so it's 3. Oh, wait a minute. 2 minus 7 is 5. So I went over 1, 2, 3, 4. Why did I go over 6? I've done something wrong here. Oh, that's supposed to be an 8. No wonder. There was something wrong. So 2 minus 8, actually, and that's going to be -6. So that's going to be +6 when I take the absolute value, which is 1/2. 7 is bigger than 1/2. And there's the greater than symbol, so A is the steeper graph. All right, so now we come down to the next pair. The next pair of graphs. So on this first one, I'm going to draw my line x equals 1, my line y equals 2, and so I'm starting at 1, 1. I'm going to go up 1, so that's +1, and I'm going to go right 5, so that's +5. If I subtract my x's, or y's, that'd be like 1 minus 2, which is -1, absolute value, over 1 minus 6, which is my x's, and that would be -5, and when I take the absolute value, that is 1/5. Okay, then over on this one, I've got my x equals 1 going through 1, 1, 1, and then my y equals 5 going through 2, 5, And if I go up 4, that's going to be 4 over positive 1. So the slope here is 4. But I could also do my y. If I do that one first, 1 minus 5. Take that absolute value over, then subtract the x's. So I'm going to go 1 minus 2. And that's going to be negative 4 over negative 2, which is actually positive 4. Over, I'm sorry, that's supposed to be negative 1. 1 minus 2 is negative 1. Over positive 1, which is 4. And 1/5 is smaller than 4, so B, that is correct, should be the steepest graph. All right, so then we go on to the next one. And I'm now not going to subtract the y's and x's. We're just going to count on the graph to make it go a little faster. And if you want to go back and see how to subtract the y's and the x's, I highly encourage you to do it that way, because eventually you're going to have to do it that way because I might not give you a graph. All right, so on this one, my point is negative 2, 2 and positive 2, 2. So I did my vertical line, x is equal to negative 2, and my horizontal line through the point 2, 2, and so that's y equals 2. So I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, where those two lines intersect, so that's positive 4. Over, I'm going to go to the right, 4, positive 4, so 4 over 4 is 1. Now, I forgot to look, but to compare the slopes, it's hard to tell which one's steeper, okay? So that's why we're going to go back and we're doing the calculations. So now we're going to do between the point 1, negative 2, and the point 4, 1. And if I draw the vertical line, x is equal to 1 through the 1 on the x, and then I'm going to draw the horizontal line through the point 4, 1, and get the line y equals 1. And then we'll go up 1, 2, 3, and right 1, 2, 3. So that's going to be 3 over 3, or 1. Well, they're the same graph. They're equal, so it has the same slope. And I didn't know that until I actually did the math calculations. And then I had already videoed this once, but I was showing also you didn't have to go up 4 over 4. Your line, wherever it crosses at a whole number and it's easy to see, you can use any of those points on the graph. So I could go up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1. Or I could go, use the black one this time, I could go up 2, right 2. Or I could go up 4, 5, 6, and right 6. Either way, it's going to end up being a rise and a run of 6 over 6 or 1 over 1. It's going to be 1. Okay, so then this exercise down below, it's got to find the slope of each line if needed. Find the slope of each line if needed. Each space on the number line has a distance of 1 unit. What is the slope of this non-vertical line? Okay, so again, here's our point, 0, 0, and 1, 4. So I did a vertical line through the point on the x-axis that's 0, so that's x equals 0. And then the horizontal line that goes through 1, 4. It goes through 4 on the y-axis, so that's going to be the line y equals 4. So now I'm going to count. Now, this time this point is lower than this point. That's why I did a vertical line through this one and a horizontal line through this one. Oh, that's the way it was before, wasn't it? Oh, well. Okay. So I'm going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to count right 1. So it will be 4 over 1, or 1. Okay, then if I look at number 2, we've got the point 2, 1 and the point 3, 4. And I'm going to go vertical line through the point 2, 1, so that's the line x equals 2. And then the other purple line goes horizontal through 3, 4, and that's y is equal to 4. So where they cross, that's where I turn. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, and right 1. So that's going to be 3 over 1, or 3. 4 is bigger than 3, so they don't ask us this until we get down to this number 3 here. But which of the lines in exercise 1 and 2 is steeper? Well, it's going to have to be 1 is steeper. And if we had looked at that before we did the problem, it's really hard to tell. But we can see that we're going up 4 as opposed to moving on 1 here. We're only going up 3. So this one's not quite as steep as that one. All right. And right here, if you want to pause, I showed you how to do it with the x and y coordinates to subtract and take absolute values. You still get 3. But you really need to know that, so if you want to pause and try to do it that way, that would be good. All right, number 4 and 5. All right, so for number 4, we've got the point 0, 0 and the point 1, negative 1. Now, I'm not sure if these were marked originally on the graph. And this is where I'm saying if you don't have any points, they don't mark any points. Notice that this line goes through, wherever it goes through the boxes where it would show me an x and a y coordinate that are whole numbers, then you're fine to use those. So I'm going to use the one that goes to the origin 0, 0.